Yesterday I said I was going to post weekly updates, but I already have a lot to say. So here are my thoughts on the first 2 days of learning Czech on Duolingo. I've now finished the first 4 units, and I'm working on the 5th one. I most likely won't be able to keep up this pace indefinitely. First of all, because the very earliest content has been pretty easy and I haven't made that many mistakes, but I'm sure it will get much more complex as I go on. And secondly, because I'm a grad student on spring break and I won't have as much time to devote to it after I go back to school next week. But for now, I figure I might as well get as much done as I can while it's still relatively easy and I have plenty of time on my hands. Here are a few things I've noticed so far. First of all, as far as the vocabulary goes, it's very different from the languages I speak, which are English, French, and a little bit of German. Most of the words it gave me are not cognates with any of these languages. There were a few exceptions though, like student, which is basically the same as the English word. And I was very interested to see that the word for tea is chai. I'm a big fan of chai lattes, so that should be pretty easy to remember. Czech has grammatical gender, which I didn't know but wasn't surprised by in the least. As a native speaker of English, there are a few things that annoy me more when it comes to learning a language than having to remember the gender of inanimate objects. But if I can do it in French and German, I can do it in Czech. It seems like adjectives have very predictable endings based on gender. For example, Duolingo gave me sentences like to je dobrý čaj, that is good tea, káva je dobrá, coffee is good, and je to mléko dobré, is that milk good? Dobrý, dobra, dobre. At least it should be easy to tell what's an adjective and remember what form it takes depending on the gender of the noun, which it seems like are masculine, feminine, and neuter. Do you see the accent marks on the final vowels? Those are significant. Duolingo has given me a lot of listening exercises for distinguishing between sounds. It gives different options that are minimal or near minimal pairs, and it asks you to pick the one that sounds the same as a particular audio clip. Some of these have been very easy, like the difference between T and D, which we have in English as well. The acute accent on vowels I've been able to distinguish pretty easily, and I think it might be vowel length, but I'm not entirely sure. And then there have been other sounds that I've barely been able to hear the difference between at all. So I'm guessing that those sounds either don't exist in English or aren't phonemic, meaning that the difference can never change the meaning of a word in English. I thought going into this that Czech had case morphology on nouns, but I'm not seeing evidence of that so far. I'm not sure if Duolingo is deliberately holding off on giving me sentences that would involve case, or if I'm just not noticing it yet, or if I was wrong about Czech having case. I guess we'll see. I'm starting to get a sense of how questions work in Czech. For yes-no questions, it's subject-verb inversion. For instance, in these examples, je and yi are the verbs and they're placed at the beginning of the sentence, before the subject. For WH questions, ones that require more than a yes-no answer, like what or where, there's a question word followed again by subject-verb inversion, as in these 2 examples. Now, the example of, is Sophie eating a carrot, makes me think that, unlike in English, there's no distinction between a state of being verb like be and an action verb like eat. In English, we would say, is that a carrot, but never, eats she a carrot. We would say, is she eating a carrot, but then it's the auxiliary that's moving to the position before the noun. But in Czech, it seems to be perfectly possible to just invert a verb like eat with a noun. On a different note, I've noticed that Czech doesn't seem to have either definite or indefinite articles. Look at the question examples. In English we say, a good book, a carrot, the hotel, and that city. But in Czech it's just dobra knaj, mrkev, hotel, but to město. Only the one with a demonstrative pronoun in English instead of an article has any kind of determiner in Czech. Finally, the last thing that I've noticed is that I think Czech may not require subject pronouns. Take a look at these examples. Je mladá, is she young? Ano, je mladý, yes, he is young. And promiňte, jsem tady nový, excuse me, I am new here. Je and jsem are the verbs here, and I don't see anything before or after them that could be a pronoun. I think that probably the verb conjugation and the gender marking on the adjectives make it obvious what pronoun the subject would be. In linguistic terms, that would make Czech a pro-job language similar to Spanish. Overall, I'm finding the course pretty easy to follow, and I feel like even just in the past 2 days, I've learned quite a bit from it. It's also giving me mostly useful words and phrases. I remember the Welsh course teaching me to say things like, Owen is eating parsnips in Antarctica, so this is a pleasant surprise. There have been a few weird sentences that I can't imagine ever saying, like, for instance, the young woman has a banana, or a book is a thing. But for the most part, it's been much better than I expected. I do think that being a grad student in linguistics is helping quite a bit. In my classes, I've had to analyze the syntax, morphology, and phonology of languages I don't speak. So I ended up treating what I found on Duolingo basically like that. This probably wouldn't come as easily to someone with no formal linguistics background. My biggest concern, though, is the audio. Given that listening exercises for nuances in the pronunciation are a big part of the course, I'm really hoping the ones it's giving me are accurate, which I'm not entirely sure I trust, given that the voices sound kind of robotic. Anyway, that's all for now. I'm going to keep y'all updated on my progress, and over the first week or two, I may do a video every couple of days instead of every week while I'm still getting a whole lot of new information about the language and really seeing what Duolingo for Czech is like. It'll probably scale back to one video a week at some point, once I reach the point where I don't have a whole lot to say every couple of days, or when I get too busy with schoolwork again and don't have the time to make a video every couple of days. Anyway, that's all for now. Be sure to subscribe if you want to hear more about how my progress goes.